China's new prime minister is assuring investors his country's economy will bounce back after being battered from pandemic restrictions. Li Qiang told the annual Boa Forum for Asia that China is opening up to the world and delivering reforms to revive growth. He used the opportunity to urge Asian countries to work together for peace and stability in the region. Pope Francis has spent the night in hospital with a respiratory infection after complaining of breathing difficulties. The 86-year-old head of the Roman Catholic Church is expected to spend several days receiving treatment. His spokesman said his condition is gradually improving, though it's not clear if he will return in time for Easter celebrations next week. Reacting to the news, President Biden asked people to make an extra prayer for the Pope's recovery. Mr. Biden is only the second ever Catholic to be elected U.S. president. Well, let's take you to Ukraine, where scuffles have broken out outside a Kyiv monastery of the Ukrainian branch of the Orthodox Church. The church is accused by the government of having ties with Russia and is defying an eviction order. Tensions over the presence of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church at the 980-year-old Kyiv Perchesk Lavra monastery have escalated since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February last year. Hours after a deadline to leave the monastery passed, midnight on Wednesday, members of the UOC refused entry to a government representative who came to inspect buildings in the gold-domed monastery sprawling complex. Well, for more on this, let's cross live to our London studios and speak to Arise special correspondent Karl Bostic. Good to see you, Karl. Just give us the details about the background to this case.
Charles, it's very fascinating because this is an important inflection point for the war, legally, militarily, and politically. Legally, because you're talking about a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a monastery of caves going back about 1,000 years, as you mentioned, Charles. That's a World Heritage Site. However, this location, where you have the Orthodox Church rooted, has been accused by the Ukrainian government of also being in line with the Russian government. To put things in perspective, Charles, only until a few years ago, Ukraine is a very deeply Orthodox religious country. Up until 2018, it basically swore allegiance to the Patriarch in Moscow. That's Patriarch Kirill. That's almost the equivalent or near equivalent of Pope Francis, who you just spoke about just a few moments ago. However, legally, as you also said, Charles, this is state property. We own this complex, but it's a complex of historical value going back 1,000 years. However, it's being charged that the monks and priests who live there have been collaborators. They're supporters and sympathetic to the Russian Orthodox Church. Supporters in the sense that you've got ceremonies and blessings being held where they actually are blessing the Russian military, that parishioners should welcome the Russian military because they're defenders of the Russian faith against Western decadence, which includes, for example, tolerance or acceptance of homosexuality. So that's where we are right now. But also, Charles, up until this time, we already have situations across the country where parishes of priests have been charged with collaborating with Russia. At least 30 as of the beginning of this year. And 30 in terms of not only blessing the invasion, but encouraging parishioners to welcome Russian troops, but also to supply intelligence. And that's where we are right now. The problem is this is a very symbolic place, and the last thing you want to see is a World Heritage Site from UNESCO being attacked by Ukrainian troops. That's why they're saying there will be no forcible eviction.
Well, it's very interesting indeed. I mean, I'm fascinated by history, and I understand that this is one of two main surviving ancient Christian sites in Ukraine, dating back, as you said, to the 11th century. But I'm wondering, Karl, if they succeed in evicting those priests and monks and students, where do they go?
Well, again, this is a very legal situation where not only do you want to evict them, but you're talking about a place where you've got priceless relics going back almost 1,000 years. When I say priceless relics, you're talking about items from a shrine. It's a labyrinth of caves that's basically the distance of 4 football fields, Charles, 4 soccer pitches, where they have underground chapels, underground churches. You have all those relics, so you have a checkpoint where Ukrainian security people are methodically going through cars, going through people who are leaving, being evicted, making sure they're taking no valuables with them. So this is not just about, a raid or an attack or whatever. It's preserving a site that's in the eyes of the rest of the world.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I know you're not sort of gazing into a crystal ball, but I mean, what do you reckon happens next? Because, I mean, the monks and the priests at that complex are saying they're not going to leave, and I understand there are lots of believers milling around acting defiantly.
You're right, Charles, and right now that's why it's a standoff, it's a stalemate, and maybe we'll have this conversation a few days from now, because there's not going to be a forcible attack, and in the same time, they want to, gradually persuade them to leave. But it's a standoff that has a real resonance, because Ukraine, as I mentioned, is very deeply religious, and now you've got these priests, who are saying that, we are followers of the Orthodox faith, and we will defend it. To give you an example, Charles, of just how much of a split it's been for Ukrainian people from the Orthodox Church, for the first time ever, they've changed the date of Christmas in their calendar to December 25th. The Orthodox date is January 7th. So there's a real delicacy to all of this, Charles, that goes beyond just military, stampeding into this place right now. Because in the end, Charles, you have up to 1,000 people who are kind of quite, shall we say, barricaded inside this complex.
That's a really interesting story, Karl. Thank you very much indeed for bringing that to our attention. Karl Bostic is a RISE special correspondent, and he was talking to me there from our studios in London.